Frederick had always been a man of peculiar habits, drawn to the fringes of the unknown. By day, he was a scholar, his mind steeped in ancient texts and esoteric lore. But by night, his thoughts drifted into the shadowy realms of the subconscious, where he sought answers to the mysteries that eluded him in the waking world. It was this fascination with the dreamscape that led Frederick into a descent he would soon regret. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of study, Frederick prepared himself for sleep. He had been reading an ancient tome that spoke of the power of dreams, how they could be harnessed, manipulated, and even controlled. The idea intrigued him, and he decided to experiment. He brewed a concoction of herbs, whispered incantations he had learned from the book, and laid himself down with a determination to explore the depths of his own mind. As he closed his eyes, a strange sensation washed over him. The boundary between reality and dream began to blur, and Frederick felt himself slipping into a void, deeper and deeper, until he was enveloped in total darkness. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in an unfamiliar landscape. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and the sky above was a dismal gray, devoid of stars or moon. The ground beneath his feet was a barren expanse of black sand, stretching endlessly in every direction. There were no landmarks, no signs of life, only an oppressive silence that pressed down upon him like a shroud. Frederick walked, hoping to find some semblance of reality within this dream. But the more he walked, the more the landscape seemed to shift and change, as though the dream itself was alive, bending to some unseen will. The ground beneath him trembled, and the air grew colder with each step. He soon found himself in a dense forest of twisted trees, their branches clawing at the sky like the hands of the damned. The trees seemed to close in around him, their gnarled roots curling around his ankles, slowing his progress. The forest was dark, the only light coming from a sickly green glow that emanated from the trees themselves. Frederick felt a growing sense of unease, as though something malevolent was watching him from the shadows. He quickened his pace, desperate to escape the forest, but no matter how far he ran, the trees seemed to stretch on forever. The whispers began then, soft at first, barely audible over the sound of his own footsteps. But they grew louder, more insistent, until they filled his ears with a cacophony of voices that spoke in a language he could not understand. Frederick covered his ears, trying to block out the noise, but it was no use. The whispers seemed to come from within his own mind, echoing through the corridors of his thoughts. Panic set in, and he broke into a run, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he pushed through the dense undergrowth. But the forest had no end. The trees grew thicker, the darkness more oppressive, until Frederick was forced to stop, his strength depleted. He collapsed to the ground, his body trembling with exhaustion. As he lay there, he realized with a growing sense of dread that he was lost in his own dream, with no way to wake up. Time lost all meaning in that accursed place. Days, months, or perhaps even years seemed to pass, though Frederick could not be sure. He wandered aimlessly through the forest, haunted by the whispers and the sense of something lurking just beyond his sight. He could feel his sanity slipping away, piece by piece, as the dream world tightened its grip on him. One day, as he wandered through the endless forest, he came across a clearing. In the center stood an ancient crumbling tower, its stones worn smooth by the passage of time. Frederick felt a glimmer of hope, thinking that perhaps this tower held the key to his escape. He approached the tower cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The door was ajar, and a faint light spilled out from within. He hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior of the tower was dimly lit, the walls lined with shelves filled with ancient books and scrolls. A spiral staircase wound its way up to the top, where the light seemed to be coming from. Frederick ascended the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the silence. At the top of the tower, he found a room bathed in a pale, unnatural light. In the center of the room stood a large mirror, its surface rippling like water. Frederick approached the mirror, mesmerized by its strange, hypnotic glow. As he stared into the mirror, his reflection stared back at him. But there was something wrong. The reflection did not move as he did. Instead, it seemed to be alive, its eyes filled with a dark, malevolent intelligence. Frederick felt a chill run down his spine as the reflection began to speak. "You are lost, Frederick," it said, its voice a hollow echo of his own. "Lost in the depths of your own mind, a prisoner of your own making." Frederick backed away from the mirror, but the reflection continued to speak. "There is no escape from this place," it said. "No waking, no return to the world of the living. You are trapped here forever." Desperation clawed at Frederick's heart. He had to find a way out, had to wake up. He turned and ran back down the stairs, his mind racing with fear. But as he reached the bottom of the tower, he found that the door had vanished, replaced by a solid wall of stone. Trapped, Frederick fell to his knees, his hands clawing at the unyielding stone. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent than before, filling his mind with a cacophony of madness. He screamed, his voice echoing through the tower. But there was no one to hear him, no one to save him. In that moment of despair, Frederick realized the terrible truth. He had delved too deep into the mysteries of the dream world, had ventured too far into the darkness, and now he was lost in a nightmare of his own making, with no hope of ever waking up. As the realization sank in, the whispers grew louder, drowning out all other thoughts. Frederick felt his mind unraveling, his sanity slipping away like sand through his fingers. He was alone, lost in a dream that had become his prison. And as the darkness closed in around him, Frederick was consumed by a single, haunting question. Was this truly a dream? Or had he crossed the threshold into a new, terrifying reality from which there was no escape?